Joining me right now is Louisiana Congressman, House Minority Whip, and House Energy and Commerce Committee member Steve Scalise. And Congressman, it is always a pleasure to see you. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Good morning, Maria. It's always great to be with you as well.
What are your expectations here for the G20, and what should the United States be doing regarding Saudi Arabia and OPEC? We know that Joe Biden went hat in hand, tried to beg the Saudis not to cut production, but to actually increase production so that oil prices would go down, and he tried to get them to do it before the midterm elections. They said no.
Yeah, and Maria, this is like a childish temper tantrum that Joe Biden's having, because he put Saudi Arabia and the other OPEC nations in a position to have more control over America's economy. It makes absolutely no sense. I know you were talking about it on the last segment with Mark Short. The bottom line is, when Joe Biden decided he was going to declare war on American energy, it made us more vulnerable to countries like Saudi Arabia, to Russia, to Iran. And by the way, Saudi Arabia right now is helping us stand up to Iran. Joe Biden won't stand up enough to Iran. He's helping them get a nuclear weapon. His foreign policy is a disaster, but it started with his failed domestic policy. His horrible anti-energy policy in America is not only costing us jobs, it's the reason that energy costs have skyrocketed. And what's the president's answer? He's raided our strategic petroleum reserve. They've taken about a third, more than a third, of our strategic reserve to try to mask Biden's failed policies on energy, open up American energy. I've got Port Fourchon in my district. If he called them right now, he doesn't have to fly to Saudi Arabia, 11,000 miles on Air Force One with all of that carbon footprint. He could just call Port Fourchon and say, will you open up the spigots? Talk to the energy companies in America. Say, look, I will get out of your way. I'll stop blocking pipelines. Biden should stop blocking all of the things he's done on permitting and say, let's produce more American energy. It's the cleanest in the world, for goodness sake, Maria. And yet he shuts down American energy and then begs foreign dictators to produce our energy and wonders why prices are so high.
Yeah, it's an incredible story, and you laid out everything so well. In terms of the strategic oil reserve, we're down to levels not seen since 1984. This is supposed to be a crisis and emergency stockpile, and he's selling it consistently so that he could keep oil and gasoline prices at lower levels going into the midterm elections. So it's all this trick to make things look one way before the midterm elections so that voters think one thing that's actually not true. He did the same thing with the rail strike, the unions telling them, oh, don't, put a pin in it. Don't, don't say no to a deal yet until after the midterm elections so that voters don't know what's really going on. We're going to speak with one of those unions this morning and ask them why they're rejecting the deal, and was there ever a tentative deal to begin with? But you just mentioned Iran, and I want to go back to that comment because it's no surprise that the Saudis are not going to do what Joe Biden wants. Look what Joe Biden is doing to the Saudis. They don't want an Iran nuclear deal. And we're looking at women in the street, protesting in the street in Iran right now. People are calling for the death of the supreme leader. Wouldn't this be a moment in time for the United States to align with the people of Iran? How come we're not hearing any comment about what's going on in Iran right now? Instead, they're driving this Iran deal forward. Doesn't that strengthen the hand of Iranian leadership?
It really does, Maria, and it's so disappointing to watch. It infuriates anybody who seeks freedom around the world. We should be encouraging anybody who wants to seek freedom, like those people, take to the street to seek more freedom. This happened in the Arab Spring under Obama.
Yeah, we're having a little trouble with your sound, but I want to just get Liz Peek here and your opinion, Liz, about the Saudis' reaction to Joe Biden. I mean, should we be surprised? He's pursuing this Iran deal. They've stated very publicly and loudly that they don't want Iran to get strengthened with an Iran deal.
So, Maria, I just think that this is probably the most boneheaded foreign policy snafu of this administration, and I'm really shocked that it's becoming a bipartisan attack on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has been for 80 years America's choice in the Middle East, America's choice in the sense that the other choice, and there is only one, is backing Iran. So for this administration, from day one, this is not a new thing, to go after Saudi Arabia, basically insult Mohammed bin Salman, refuse to talk to him early in his administration, take away the terrorist designation of the Houthis, stop sending arms, etc. I mean, it's ridiculous. And the upshot now is you have an insulted head of state, which is de facto what Mohammed bin Salman is in Saudi Arabia, basically doing what he thinks is in their best interest, that is to say, cutting production because oil prices, from their perspective, are down 50%, and they need to maintain their revenue for a very ambitious building program.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Yeah, this isn't helping Biden, but guess what? He hasn't helped himself.
Right. Yeah, that's all right, spot on. And Steve Scalise, then he goes to Saudi Arabia and he gives MBS that the knuckles, the knuckles punch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of good that did too, by the way. And by the French president told him before the trip that they weren't going to increase production, and yet he flew over there anyway, humiliating himself instead of just recognizing American energy is the cleanest in the world. These guys love beating up on America. Then they try to lie to the American people because people get angry because they're paying higher energy costs, over 60% higher. Why don't we just open up American energy and support freedom, by the way, support Iranians who seek freedom. He won't do that either.
Well, this is driving voters. You've got 23 days until the midterm elections. You and your colleagues have come out with this commitment to America. We've got new Fox News polls this morning, and voters are watching. I mean, they show that 63% of registered Americans disapprove of President Biden's energy policy. Only 43% are actually approving. We could see, new actions from the administration this week on rising gasoline prices. The president teased an announcement at an event in Los Angeles last week, Congressman, but we are not expecting him to open up the spigots, that's for sure. But what can you do to stop this agenda should you take the majority in November?
Yeah, and that's why we rolled out the commitment to America, to show the country there is a better way. And we put bold conservative principles in place to say, if you give us a Republican House majority, we'll actually start pushing back on this far left socialism we're seeing from Biden. The American voters are a lot smarter than Joe Biden gives them credit for, and they recognize really bad policy when they see it. So, first of all, stop the madness. All these multi-trillion-dollar spending bills, that's what's driving up inflation. It's the Biden-Pelosi agenda. So stop doing that. Start passing bills through the House that show the country how to produce energy in America to lower costs for families, how to deal with inflation so you can lower costs for families, how to secure our border, and also how to help secure communities. Crime is out of control because Democrats like Biden, Pelosi have embraced the defund the police movement, as well as this cashless bail crazy idea that's wrecking cities all across America.
Yeah, Lee Zeldin yesterday told me if he wins, he's going to declare a crime emergency in New York and temporarily stop cashless bail immediately. We'll see about that. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much. We'll be watching all of that.
Always
Congressman
great being with you.
Steve Scalise joining us, and to you. Thank you, sir.